That ending got me extremely hyped to know that Okabe, our mad scientist, is kind of finally back. But even though that happened at the end, I got extremely excited. There was something that was very ominous that happened right at the end of this episode, and some of you might have missed that, so I want to clarify what happened, or you can go back and see it for yourself, just load up the video. But at the end of the episode, when the time is ticking back, like, you know the standard, like, convergence sequence when you see the time go back, like, 48 hours, what we see when, you know, Okabe, he's trying to go back. In that scene at the end, when it happens in this episode, you see it go, like, 0-0 across the board, and then all of a sudden, you see a cracking effect. Now, I'm no scientist, or mad scientist, but usually when you see some form of, like, time, like, aspect or anything in a series, and you see some form of cracking effect appear on it, usually that means, like, something really bad just happened, like a time paradox or something like that. Time broke, and I feel like whatever is about to happen is probably something that we, as watchers of Steins Gate, probably have not seen before, just because of that ending sequence. I mean, let's look at what Okabe said. He said that he will never give up. He will never give up trying to make sure that Mayuri can go back in the past and save Okabe from doing what he's done throughout this world line. And so because of that, he's like, I will do it hundreds, thousands, and even millions of times. Now let's factor all that in for a second, okay? Going back 48 hours, okay? And repeating these same 2 days over and over again, trying to save someone and stop certain points in time from happening, is incredibly difficult. We've seen what happens in the original Steins Gate. Look at what Kyoma had to go through, what he had to see continuously over and over again trying to save Mayuri. And eventually, as we know, thanks to that, is what broke him in Steins Gate 0. And he even states in this episode he'll never give up again, he'll go forward, he'll do it millions of times if he has to. And so I'm assuming the reason why time just broke in that moment is because Okabe is probably in a state of limbo. He probably is just repeated those 48 hours so many times that right now it's just like time is just on a standstill. It's just broken because he's just going 48 hours back, 48 hours back, 48 hours back, and he's never going past it. He's never even going further back. You know, I feel like that's probably what maybe that ending sequence represents, unless it's a time paradox or time is just legit shattered. So yeah, very interesting, you know, part of this episode. It makes me wonder what is going to happen, and I mean, how is you know, Okabe, like, gonna handle it? I mean, number one, I mean, him going back millions of times, that's a scary thing, because you gotta imagine all of the suffering he's gonna go through. Like, that's definitely on a higher level than what he went through in the original Steins Gate, because, yes, he might have done it hundreds of times with Mayuri, trying to, you know, save her, maybe thousands. I don't really know the exact count on how many times he tried to do it. However, I highly doubt he reached into like 50,000 attempts to 100,000 or even 1,000,000 attempts. I highly doubt he went that far. So, if he really has to go that far just to get to the Steins Gate world line, that's ridiculous, and I really feel bad for the man even more than I already did. Now, let's talk about one quick thing that I do want to mention that many might have forgotten about, or might be looking at this episode in a little bit of a negative light. And in some ways I can understand why people are, but I do need to clarify and make sure everybody's on the same page and understands why Okabe was able to get away from the soldiers and, you know, Professor Leskin in the middle of this episode. So, you know that scene when, you know, Okabe tries to go back and when he's telling, you know, Suzu, like, hey, you know, I'm from the future and all that, you need to, you know, go back in the past. He's like, you know, Mayuri, I want you to go back to Arclight and all that, make sure you are successful. You know, Mayuri goes back, and then all of a sudden you see Dr. Leskin, you know, he comes in, and then the time machine blows up. Now, once again, we know there's probably no bodies, which means that this could go along with the events that happened at the original Steins Gate, like the original Steins Gate series, of how you just have to trick the world, trick yourself to be able to get things done, to kind of, you know, go around convergences, and that's probably what they're doing. But regardless of that scene, because I don't want to get back into that, because I talked about that extensively in the last episode, when he gets there to, help out Mayuri and stuff, all of a sudden it blows up, and then, he manages to get back to the lab right after that sequence. And I'd seen a couple of people on social media saying, like, oh, how did he manage to get away from armed soldiers, Professor Luskin and all that? That doesn't make any sense. In a lot of ways, I do agree. I do agree, when you have armed soldiers just, around him and stuff, he really shouldn't have been able to get away. However, there is a couple things that we need to factor in and realize. Number one, Okabe, he can't die. He legit cannot die until 2025. That has been established from the original series of Steins Gate. He cannot die until then. So that means, effectively, Okabe, he's immortal. He cannot die until then. Now, if on a strange occurrence he was to die, it would shift him into a whole new world line, or time itself might even break. We don't really know those type of consequences. So, Okabe, since he is in this timeline, he's in the beta world line, he cannot die. So, yeah, he effectively can dodge bullets, he can do anything. Like, doesn't matter what, he will survive pretty much anything that comes at him. So, yeah, he's kind of like, he's got plot armor, but the plot armor makes sense. And this has been there since the original Steins Gate, because let me kind of remind all of you, if you have forgotten. You remember when Mayuri was constantly dying in different ways and stuff, and the Rounders were showing up, ending her? Well, somehow Okabe was able to get away and get back to the lab and go back 48 hours or use D-Mail. So when you think about it like that, he's always been kind of navigating away from situations that seem very convenient. But the reason why is because, once again, time itself is on his side. Even though it obviously is making him suffer and suffer and suffer, still, time is on his side to where it won't let him die. So yeah, that is kind of how he got away from Dr. Luskin and stuff, but even then I can understand why people are a little bit upset, because it is a little bit convenient, but once again, it does make sense. Because when you think about Dr. Luskin's character and what he knows from the future, then obviously he might have been told that if, Okabe gets tampered with whatsoever, it could cause a big problem, so maybe he just knows. He knows that he shouldn't even touch Okabe. He should just let him go, because, if he does, he can cause major issues and timeline shifts that just he doesn't really know what to do, or, how, or what would actually happen. So when you think about it, that makes sense. Okabe, he is now kind of determined. He's got his determination back to be able to try to change the future. And I really like how the build-up for this was done. Many might say that's been a very slow build-up for the scene, but I think, in reality, it was worth it. Because, you see, a man that's broken doesn't just get over issues like what he went through like that. That does not happen. I'm sorry to say it, but it doesn't. It's been almost a complete full year, and not counting in probably the time traveling he's going to be doing constantly, repeatedly, reliving days, it's been more than a year since Kurisu has died, and so it takes a long time to overcome problems, and he's still affected to this day, and he probably always will be affected by Kurisu's death and what he did. But he's finally gaining back determination to try to fix the future, fix this timeline, eventually reach the Steins Gate world line. And I really like the fact that in this episode, he's like, the reason why I stopped on this world line is because Kurisu was willing to sacrifice herself for the sake of everyone else. He's like, she tried to protect this world line. That was what he always said to comfort himself, is that, the reason why he could live with Kurisu's death was because she willingly sacrificed herself to protect the Beta world line. And if it wasn't for that, the Beta world line wouldn't be there. And so he's like, now that I know that, the very thing that, she sacrificed herself for is not going to happen, then there's no freaking reason for me to try to not, tamper with time. Because, look, the whole reason why he came to the Beta world line was to save Mayuri. But now that Mayuri is pretty much, in the crosshairs, we don't really know what her outcome is going to be or what's going to happen to her, then that means that, everything he did in the Alpha world line was pointless. So he's like, okay, you know what, I gotta start getting back into time and messing with it, because now it's very apparent that what I wanted with this world line is not going to happen. So that's what happened. I love his determination, how he realizes now he just can't sit by and just watch things, go on, let World War III happen, let everybody just, try to work on the time machine on their own without him. And I just like how knowledgeable, like how much knowledge he had within this episode when he was talking to Daru and Maho about the time machine. So let's get into that. So towards the beginning of the episode, when Okabe's trying to figure out, like, what happened to Mayuri and Suzu, are they dead, were his bodies found? No bodies were found, which once again goes with the theory I was talking about in the last episode. But I'm not going to go back into that, because I covered that already. But after, or before that, he also talks to Daru and Maho about how to create the D-Mail, to create, the time leap machine. He talks about all of it. He's like, okay, back in the past, what you did, Daru, you went into CERN's database, got the information about black holes, you created it, you digitized it and all that to where you can use it in this, microwave, but also use this certain machine to be able to create the time leap machine. And so because of all of that is what caused the events of Steins Gate, and I just love how Okabe knows all this information just right off the top of his head, because obviously if you had to deal with time so much and repeat days over and over, you probably would have a good understanding of how time travel works, or at the very least how to create it. And so instantly they were able to make this time machine in like a couple of hours, or actually a full day or almost 2 days. So that's pretty impressive when you really take a moment to think about it. So it was cleared up on the relationship between Dr. Leskin and Professor Reyes. That was officially cleared, because you could look at, Reyes and think that she was working with Leskin the entire time from the earlier events from Steins Gate Zero. But this episode lets us know that Reyes was apparently like a spy from Russia, watching Leskin, what he was doing, trying to get information, and in this episode, he pretty much puts her down, and he utters the name, which is a part of the other organization that rivals his faction. So it lets us know that Reyes was always someone that was in disguise and trying to mess with Leskin, get any information she possibly could. And so that explains why Calgary took her out in the last episode. Like, why she was down, bleeding, and all that, was because Calgary took her out thanks to Leskin knowing about the truth of who Reyes was. And so, yeah, that's pretty cool. I like how that was clarified, but also it does let us know that the reason why she had a massive freak out, in the last episode, was definitely because of Mayuri. It wasn't natural or normal whatsoever. But at the same time, though, she does work for Leskin, and she did take out the, her copy, someone that looked like her, like it was nothing, because, that was, a rival faction. So that explains a lot. I like how that's cleared up as a very subtle scene, and I have to admit, though, I'm a little bit upset with Reyes' character. I expected a lot more from her as a character, especially someone that's in a situation that, is dressing up similar to Calgary to kind of fool us, the audience. I feel like that was a big waste. So honestly, I think the weakest part of Steins Gate Zero, even though I love this series, it's one of my favorite series of this year, and Steins Gate's one of my favorite series of all time, obviously everything has problems. And I think the weakest part of Steins Gate Zero is definitely the Calgary stuff. Definitely the stuff with Calgary and Reyes. And the reason why I say that is because even though there was some backstory revealed to Calgary, and, we got some development for her, and the reason why she's brainwashed, and Leskin, which is really nice, I love the way that was done, Calgary as a character still, I'm not emotionally attached to her. I think many are probably not as emotionally attached to her as you should be, and visual novel readers most likely are very attached to her, because obviously visual novels have more time to expand upon characters, different bad ends or good ends, whatever, and so many have a good understanding of Calgary if you're a visual novel reader. But if you're an anime only, Calgary didn't have a lot of time to really, flourish and be a really amazing character, kind of how Suzu was, how she had that gradual build-up throughout the original Steins Gate. So, Calgary as a character, I think, was a little bit messy, especially Reyes, because she really had no presence whatsoever, and honestly, if you really don't pay attention to characters or really try to notice everything, you're probably not even going to really know who Professor Reyes is. You probably forgot who she is in the first place, which is really, kind of just saying a lot about how her character is used. I really don't know what role she played in the visual novel, or what role she plays in the visual novel, but I'm assuming she had a lot more to do than what she had within the anime. But okay, getting off the negative stuff, though, let's say overall, this episode was pretty spot on quality, and just has me hyped up for the conclusion of the series, because we've entered into that end game now. We're like in the final stretch of Steins Gate, and it will be coming to an end very soon. Now, I do want to make sure everybody is aware of this, but next episode, or next week, we're not having another episode. Like, okay, clarify before you freak out. Next week, Steins Gate's on break, okay? So you're not going to have an episode next week, so when Wednesday rolls around and, you're waiting for the episode to come out and all that, it's not going to be out. And the reason why, because break. Holidays and stuff, it just needs to be pushed on break. So there you go. That is the reason why. So if you're wondering, that is the reason. So anyways, I want to end this video here. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like. And if you want to get notified for whenever I upload a video, please click the bell icon down below. And with that, Chibi out.